At the family dinner, my son said, "Your job is to look after my kids while I enjoy my life with my wife. It's that simple. If you have a problem with it, the door is right there." I replied, "Perfect. I'll go, and you can start paying your own bills." It was that simple. Those words left my mouth before I could even think, chillingly cold, like the ice cubes floating in the water glasses on the table. Marcus stopped chewing. Sierra dropped her fork. The sound of metal hitting porcelain echoed in the heavy silence that filled the dining room. My 3 grandchildren looked up from their plates, confused, sensing that something had just shattered, but not understanding what. Only Chloe, my 16-year-old granddaughter, looked at me with those dark, all-seeing eyes she inherited from my mother, and in her gaze, there was something I didn't expect to find. Pride. I should have seen it coming. I should have noticed the signs over the past 3 months. The quick glances Marcus and Sierra would exchange when they thought I wasn't looking. The conversations that abruptly ended when I walked into the room. The suitcases always ready by the front door, as if this home was a hotel and I was the permanent staff. But a mother never wants to believe her own child is using her. A mother always finds excuses, always justifies, always forgives before she's even asked for forgiveness. I rose slowly, with the quiet dignity my own mother taught me when I was just a little girl in the South. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I simply folded the cloth napkin in my lap, placed it next to my untouched plate, and walked toward my bedroom without looking back. I heard Marcus's chair scrape against the hardwood floor. I heard his voice calling out to me, but it sounded distant, as if coming from the bottom of a well. "Mom, wait, it wasn't that serious." But it was that serious. It was much more serious than he could ever imagine. That Sunday night, that dinner I myself had spent 4 hours preparing, was the moment everything exploded. But the story began much earlier, 3 months ago, when Marcus called me one Tuesday afternoon. I was at my small house upstate, the one I bought with your father's pension money after he passed, watering the basil plants in the small garden I loved so much. The phone rang as the afternoon sun gilded the cream-colored walls of my home. The one I painted myself with my own 2 hands, the one where every corner held a memory from the 30 years I lived alone, but never lonely. "Mom, I need you." Those were his words. "Mom, I need you." And I, as always, dropped everything. Marcus explained that Sierra was exhausted, that the 3 children were too much for her alone, that his job as an executive kept him constantly traveling across the country, sometimes weeks at a time away from home. He told me they just needed temporary help, only a few months, until things settled down, until they found a suitable nanny, until Sierra recovered from burnout. His voice sounded so tired, so desperate on the phone, that I didn't hesitate for a second. I sold my house in less than 1 month. That little house with the porch where I drank coffee every morning watching the sunrise, with its wooden rocking chair that squeaked softly when I swayed, with its windows looking out onto the open fields where the birds sang at dawn. I sold it for $45,000, less than it was worth, because I needed the money quickly to help my son. Marcus told me I could stay with them as long as I needed, that there was a room for me, that we would be a united family again, just like when he was little. I arrived on a Friday afternoon with my 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. That was all that was left of my life. The rest I sold, gave away, or left behind. Marcus and Sierra greeted me with hugs and smiles. The children ran toward me shouting, "Grandma, Grandma!" Chloe, the oldest, greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and a look that even then seemed sad. Elijah and Isaiah, the 8-year-old twins, jumped around me like excited puppies. Everything seemed perfect. They showed me my room, a small space at the end of the hall, the one they previously used to store Christmas decorations and boxes of unused items. It had a twin bed, a narrow closet, and a window that overlooked the back alley. The walls were stark white and empty. There was no space for my rocking chair, no space for my framed photos, no space for almost anything that made me me. But Marcus put his hand on my shoulder and said, "It's temporary, Mom, just until we get organized." And I smiled and said it was perfect, that it was all I needed. The first week was beautiful. I cooked for everyone, prepared the children's school lunches, washed the clothes, ironed Marcus's shirts. Sierra thanked me with hugs and told me, "I don't know what we'd do without you, Grace." Marcus would come home from work to find the house clean, dinner ready, the kids bathed, and their homework done. I felt useful, needed, like I was part of something important again. The second week, Marcus and Sierra announced they had to travel for work, 3 days to Chicago for an important conference. I would stay with the children. "Of course," I said. "That's what I'm here for." They left on a Wednesday morning with their elegant suitcases. Sierra in that salmon-colored dress that highlighted her slender figure. Marcus in his gray suit that made him look successful and secure. They kissed me on the cheek and left a list of instructions taped to the refrigerator. They returned on Sunday night, tanned and relaxed, smelling of expensive perfume and wine. They brought me a box of chocolates as a thank you. The third week, they traveled again, and the fourth, and so it became routine. I woke up at 5 a.m. before the sun rose. I made coffee in that silver coffee maker that made a sighing sound when it finished brewing. The smell of coffee filled the silent kitchen while I packed 3 lunchboxes with sandwiches cut into perfect triangles, washed fruit, and homemade cookies. I woke the children up at 6:30 a.m., dressed them, combed their hair, tied their shoes, and walked them the 4 blocks to school. Elijah taking my right hand, Isaiah my left. Chloe walked ahead with her backpack slung over one shoulder and her headphones on. I returned to the empty house and cleaned. Every day, I cleaned that house that never seemed to stay clean. I mopped the hardwood floors, dusted the furniture, folded the laundry, and picked up the toys the twins scattered everywhere. At noon, I ate alone in the kitchen, standing by the sink, looking out the window at the uncared-for backyard. In the afternoons, I picked up the children from school, gave them a snack, supervised their homework, and took them to the park if the weather was nice. In the evenings, I cooked dinners that Marcus and Sierra almost never ate because they came home late or not at all. The suitcases by the door became part of the landscape. There were always 2 ready, a black one and a wine-colored one, waiting for the next trip. Marcus claimed it was for work, important meetings, clients to attend to, contracts to close. But I started noticing things. The hotel tags on the luggage when they returned. Hotels with spas, hotels on beaches, hotels that didn't look like they were for business trips. One afternoon, I found Sierra's phone forgotten on the living room table. It was unlocked. I didn't want to look. I really didn't. But the screen showed an Instagram notification. A new photo posted. I opened it without thinking. It was Sierra at an elegant restaurant with a glass of wine in her hand, smiling at the camera. The location tag said, Miami. The caption read, "Well-deserved break." It had been posted 2 days earlier when they were supposedly at a work conference in Chicago. That was when something started to move inside me, something dark and cold, like well water. Sierra's photo in Miami glowed on the phone screen like a silent slap in the face. "Well-deserved break," the caption read. I was sitting on the living room couch with that phone in my trembling hands while the children played on the floor at my feet, building towers with colored blocks. Elijah was shouting that his tower was taller. Isaiah said his was stronger. Chloe was reclined on the other sofa reading a book, but her eyes weren't moving across the pages. She was watching me over the edge of the book, quiet, waiting. I swiped the screen. There were more photos. Sierra, on a white sand beach, in a coral-colored swimsuit and huge sunglasses. Marcus next to her on the same beach, tanned, relaxed, with a beer in his hand. Both of them at an ocean view restaurant, both toasting with champagne flutes. The dates of the posts coincided exactly with their supposed work trips, every single one of them. I closed the app. My hands were no longer trembling. Something strange was happening inside me, something that wasn't fury or sadness, but a kind of cold clarity, like when dirty water settles and you can suddenly see the riverbed. I left the phone exactly where I'd found it and got up from the sofa. Chloe was still watching me. Our eyes met for a long second. She slowly closed the book and said in a low voice, "Grandma, I need to show you something." We went up to her room while the twins continued playing downstairs. Chloe's room was the only space in that house that seemed to have a soul of its own. Band posters on the walls, clothes draped over the chair back, books piled on the desk. She locked the door and pulled out her own phone. She sat on the bed and motioned for me to sit next to her. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have told you this weeks ago, but I didn't know how." Her voice sounded guilty, strained. She opened a messaging app and showed me something that chilled my blood. It was a group chat called Mom Plan. The only members were Marcus and Sierra. Chloe had gotten into her mother's phone one night and taken screenshots of everything. Now she showed them to me slowly, giving me time to read each message. The group had messages dating back 4 months, from before I even sold my house. Marcus: "I talked to my mom already. She says yes." Sierra: "Perfect. With her watching the kids, we saved the $1,200 a month for the nanny." Marcus: "And on top of that, we get the money from the sale of her house. We can finally pay off the credit cards." Sierra: "Genius. We'll tell her we're holding it for her but use it for the debts. She doesn't know how to check bank statements anyway." Marcus: "She's my mom. She won't ask questions." I kept reading. There were dozens of messages. Sierra complaining that I cooked with too much oil. Marcus laughing about how I couldn't figure out the new TV remote. Both of them planning trips while I stayed with the kids. Sierra suggesting they give me a smaller room because I didn't need that much space. Marcus replying that the storage room was sufficient for someone my age. There was a recent message from 2 weeks ago. Sierra: "Your mom is starting to ask questions about the money." Marcus: "I'll tell her it's invested. She doesn't understand those things." Sierra: "We should get her to sign a power of attorney. That way we have total control." Marcus: "Good idea. I'll tell her it's in case of an emergency." Chloe took the phone away. My hands were clenched in my lap, my nails digging into my palms. "There's more," she said, her voice shaking. "They sold your furniture, the things you left in the garage. Mom posted them on Facebook Marketplace. They sold it for $800 and went out to a fancy restaurant. I know because I was there. They forced me to go." She swallowed hard. Dad raised a toast and said, "Thank you, Mom, for your generosity." I stood up. I walked to Chloe's window. From there I could see the quiet neighborhood street, the trees with their leaves gently swaying in the wind, the identical houses with their perfectly manicured lawns. Everything looked so normal, so orderly, but I felt like my entire world had been turned inside out like a dirty sock. For 3 months, I had believed I was helping my son. For 3 months, I had been up at 5 a.m. I had ironed, cooked, cleaned, and cared for the children. For 3 months, I had slept in that tiny room, feeling useful, needed, and important, and it had all been a lie from the start. "Grandma, I'm so sorry." Chloe's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. She stood next to me, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I wanted to tell you sooner, but I was scared. I was afraid you would leave and I'd be stuck here alone with them, because you're the only one in this house who treats me like I matter, the only one who asks about my day, the only one who sees me." I hugged her. I felt her thin body tremble against mine. She was only a child, just 16 years old, trapped in a family that used her like a decoration. I realized then that I wasn't the only one being exploited in that house. Chloe was also invisible to her parents. Just another responsibility delegated to Grandma while they enjoyed their perfect Instagram life. "I won't leave without you," I whispered in her ear. "I promise you that." That afternoon, after picking up the twins from school and giving them their snack, I waited for them to settle down to watch TV. I went up to my room and closed the door. I pulled out an old notebook I had carried with me for years, the one where I wrote down recipes and shopping lists. I tore out a clean page and began to write. I wrote down everything I could remember: the dates Marcus asked me for the money, the times they traveled, the missing furniture, the promises they made, every detail, every conversation, every lie. Then, I searched the bottom of my suitcase for a wrinkled business card I had saved years ago. It was from a lawyer in the small town where I used to live, an older man who helped me with the paperwork when your father died. His name was Attorney Jackson. I didn't know if he was still practicing or if he still had the same number, but he was the only person I could think of who might help me. I went down to the kitchen and used the house phone to call. I dialed the number with trembling fingers. It rang 3 times. 4, 5. I was about to hang up when I heard his voice. "Attorney Jackson's office." My heart leapt. "This is Grace Hawthorne," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I don't know if you remember me. You helped my husband years ago with his will." There was a pause. Then his voice, warmer. "Of course I remember you, Mrs. Hawthorne. How are you? Tell me how I can help." I told him everything. I spoke in a low voice so the children wouldn't hear me from the living room. I told him about the money, the furniture sold, the lies, the messages Chloe had shown me. He listened in silence. When I finished, there was another long silence. Then he said, "Mrs. Hawthorne, what you're describing is the financial exploitation of an elderly person. It is a crime. You have rights, you have options." He explained that I could recover my money, that I could prove Marcus used it without my consent, that the messages were evidence, and that the unauthorized sale of my furniture was theft. But he warned me that it would be a difficult, painful public process, and that my son could face serious legal consequences. He asked if I was sure I wanted to proceed. I looked around the kitchen that I cleaned every day. The clean dishes in the drainer, the mopped floor shining under the light, the grocery list on the refrigerator in my handwriting, all evidence of my invisible labor, my life turned into unpaid service. I thought of my sold home, my lost garden, my stolen mornings. I thought of Chloe crying on my shoulder. "I'm sure," I said. "Tell me what I need to do." Attorney Jackson gave me precise instructions. I needed proof of everything. The messages Chloe had shown me were a start, but we needed more. I needed bank documents proving Marcus had used my money. I needed evidence of the sale of my furniture. I needed to record conversations if possible. But above all, he told me something that branded itself into my brain like hot iron. "Mrs. Hawthorne, you cannot let them know that you know. You have to act normal. You have to continue being the helpful grandmother while you gather the evidence. If they suspect anything, they will hide everything, and you will lose your opportunity. Act normal." Those 2 words became my mantra for the next few weeks. Act normal while inside I felt like I was falling apart. Act normal while preparing breakfast for the very people who had betrayed me. Act normal while ironing the shirts of a son who saw me as a free employee. That same night, Marcus and Sierra came home late again. They walked in laughing about something, bags from a high-end store dangling from their arms. Sierra was wearing a new lavender dress that probably cost more than I spent on groceries for the entire week. They found me in the kitchen cleaning up the dinner dishes they hadn't arrived in time to eat. "Hey, Mom," Marcus said, kissing me on the forehead as if nothing were wrong. "The kids are already asleep." "I know," I nodded. "They're in bed. Chloe's in her room." Sierra walked past me without a glance, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor, leaving a trail of sweet perfume that turned my stomach. Marcus opened the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. He leaned against the counter and looked at me with that expression I used to mistake for affection, but now recognized as condescension. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." My heart sped up, but I kept my hand steady, washing a plate. "Tell me, son." He took a long swig of his beer. "It's about your finances. I've been thinking you should sign a power of attorney. It's a legal document that allows me to handle your money in case you have a medical emergency or something. It's for your safety." There it was, exactly what the messages had predicted. I put the plate in the drainer and slowly dried my hands on the kitchen towel, giving myself time to control my voice. "A power of attorney," I repeated. "Yeah," he said. "It's common. A lot of elderly people do it. That way I can help you with all the bank paperwork and those complicated things. You know you're not very good with technology." "Mom, it's just to make your life easier." I looked him in the eyes, those brown eyes that were identical to mine, that once looked up at me with need when he was a baby crying in the early morning, when he was a child scared of storms, when he was a teenager with a broken heart from his first love. Now those same eyes looked at me with a barely disguised mix of impatience and manipulation. "Let me think about it," I said softly. "It's important. I want to make sure I understand it correctly." His expression changed for a fraction of a second. A flash of irritation crossed his face before he managed to smile again. "Sure, Mom, take your time. But it's nothing major. Seriously, it's just a piece of paper." He finished his beer, left the empty bottle on the counter for me to throw away, and walked out of the kitchen. I heard him go up the stairs. I heard his bedroom door close. I heard the sound of the television turning on. I stayed alone in the kitchen with my hands still damp. Marcus's empty bottle shone under the fluorescent light. I picked it up and tossed it into the recycling bin. And as I did, I realized something. I no longer felt pain. I no longer felt that pinch in my chest that comes when someone you love disappoints you. What I felt was something different, something more dangerous. I felt determination. The next morning, after taking the children to school, I returned home and went up to the main bedroom. It was the first time I had been in there since I came to live with them. Marcus and Sierra were out again, this time at what they called a midday investors meeting. I knew they were probably at a spa or a fancy restaurant, but I no longer cared. I had a job to do. I opened Marcus's closet. It was filled with expensive suits, perfectly ironed shirts, and shoes lined up like soldiers. On the top shelf were shoe boxes. I took them down one by one. Most contained exactly that, shoes. But the fifth box was holding something different. Papers, bank statements. I pulled them out with trembling hands and carried them to the bed to examine them under the light coming through the window. It was all there. My savings account was in my name, but Marcus was listed as a co-signer. The initial balance, $45,000. The withdrawals began 2 weeks after I arrived at this house. $3,000, $4,000, $2,500. Each withdrawal had a vague description: medical expenses, home repairs, family investment. But I had never had medical expenses. The house hadn't had repairs. There was no investment. The current account balance was $16,200. Marcus had spent nearly $30,000 of my money in 3 months. I took out my cell phone, the one Chloe had taught me to use better in recent weeks. I took photos of every page, every bank statement, every withdrawal, every lie documented on the bank's letterhead. My hands were no longer shaking. They were steady, like a surgeon making a precise incision. I put everything back exactly as I had found it. I closed the closet, went downstairs, made myself a cup of tea, and sat at the kitchen table to wait for them. When they returned 2 hours later, loaded with more shopping bags, they found me peeling potatoes for dinner. "Hey, Mom," they said in unison. I greeted them with a smile. That smile I had perfected over 72 years of life, the one that hid everything I needed to hide. That night, after everyone was asleep, I went down to the living room in silence. I sat on the sofa in the dark and opened my phone. I sent Attorney Jackson all the photos I had taken. He responded in minutes, despite the late hour. "This is more than enough. We are ready to proceed when you say the word. But remember, once we start, there's no turning back. Your son will face charges. There will be serious legal consequences." I looked around the dark living room. The twins' toys tidied in their basket, the family photos on the wall, all with perfect smiles and perfect lies. The suitcases by the door, always ready for the next escape. I thought of my lost home, my stolen money, my dignity trampled. I thought of Chloe upstairs in her room, probably awake too, probably wondering if I would really do something, or if I would finally give in, as everyone expected me to. I wrote my reply. "I'm ready. Tell me what's next." Attorney Jackson's response came quickly. "First, you need to find somewhere to go. You cannot stay in that house once they know what you're doing. Do you have family, friends, someone who can take you in temporarily?" That was the hard part. All my immediate family were gone. Your father passed 10 years ago, my sister 5 years ago, my parents much longer. My friends were all in the small town 300 miles away where I used to live. I couldn't just show up on their doorstep without explanation. But then I remembered something. A distant cousin, Janet, who lived in this very city. We hadn't seen each other in years, not since my sister's funeral, but she had always been kind to me. She always told me, "Call me if you ever need anything." The next day, while the children were at school, I called her. Her voice sounded surprised but warm when she heard mine. "Grace, what a surprise! How are you?" I told her I was fine, that I lived nearby now, and that I'd like to see her to catch up. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop the following day. I didn't tell her anything else over the phone. Some conversations need to be face-to-face. The coffee shop smelled of cinnamon and fresh coffee. Janet arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing, her gray hair pulled back in a bun, and her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. We sat by the window, ordered coffee, and then I told her everything, every detail, every betrayal, every lie. She listened in silence, her coffee cooling in the mug, without taking a single sip. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes were wet. "Grace, you can stay with me for as long as you need. I have a guest room. It's not big, but it's yours. And if that girl, Chloe, needs to come with you, she's welcome too. No one deserves to be treated like that, least of all you, who have given your whole life for your family." I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot that had been tight for months. I wasn't alone. I had somewhere to go. I had someone who believed in me. "Thank you, Janet," I whispered. "You don't know what this means to me." She squeezed my hand tighter. "Women have to look out for each other," she said, "especially when sons forget how to look out for the mothers who raised them." I left that coffee shop feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The next few days were the strangest of my life. I lived in two simultaneous realities. In one, I was the usual helpful grandma, waking up before dawn, preparing breakfasts, packing lunches, cleaning bathrooms, folding laundry. In the other, I was a silent strategist, gathering evidence piece by piece, building my escape like someone secretly putting together a puzzle. No one noticed anything. Marcus and Sierra continued with their lives as if I were part of the furniture, useful but invisible. One afternoon, while cleaning Marcus's study, I found more things. A crumpled receipt in the wastebasket. It was from a high-end downtown jewelry boutique, $2,300 for a white gold bracelet. The date exactly matched one of the withdrawals from my account. Sierra had worn that bracelet in her last Instagram post, showing it off on her slender wrist while holding a glass of wine. The caption read, "When your husband spoils you for no reason, he loves me so much." I took a photo of the receipt, crumpled it up exactly as it was, and put it back in the wastebasket. I kept cleaning as if nothing happened, but inside, something burned. That night at dinner, Sierra wore the bracelet. The dining room light reflected off the gold, making it sparkle. She deliberately moved her wrist as she ate, making sure everyone saw it. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, looking at Marcus with bright eyes. "My husband has such good taste." Marcus smiled proudly. "Only the best for you, love." Chloe looked at me from across the table. Our eyes met for a second. She knew. I could see in her expression that I had discovered something else. She lowered her gaze to her plate and kept eating in silence, but I saw her fingers squeeze the fork harder. The next day was Saturday. Marcus announced at breakfast that he and Sierra were leaving on a trip again, this time to Miami. 5 days for an important industry convention. "Mom, you'll take care of everything here, right?" It wasn't a question. I nodded while serving more orange juice. "Of course, son. Go, be at ease." They left Sunday morning. I watched them load their suitcases into the car. Sierra in huge sunglasses and a mint-colored dress that fluttered in the breeze. Marcus in his perfectly ironed shirt. They kissed me on the cheeks. "Be good, kids," Sierra shouted out the window as they drove away. The car disappeared around the corner. I stood in the driveway with the 3 children beside me, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. That afternoon, after the twins went down for their nap, I asked Chloe to come to my room. I locked the door. We sat on the edge of my narrow bed. "Chloe," I said in a low voice, "I need you to help me with something important." She nodded immediately. "Anything, Grandma?" I explained my plan. I needed access to Marcus's laptop. I needed to check his emails, his files, any other evidence of how he had spent my money. Chloe knew the password because she sometimes used it for schoolwork, but we had to be careful. We couldn't leave a trace. We couldn't change anything. Just look and document. She looked at me with those eyes that seemed too old for her age. "Grandma, they're robbing you. Of course I'm going to help you, but there's something else you need to know." She lowered her voice even more. "Mom is not pregnant. That story they told you a month ago about the high-risk pregnancy is a lie. I heard her talking on the phone with her sister. She said they invented it so you wouldn't ask questions about why they travel so much." The air caught in my throat. I remembered the day Marcus sat me down in the living room and told me with a serious face that Sierra was pregnant. But there were complications, that she needed rest, that doctors had recommended short trips to reduce her stress. I had cried with happiness, thinking I would have another grandchild. I had cooked special meals. I had insisted that Sierra not lift a finger. It had all been an act. "Thank you for telling me," I whispered. Chloe put her hand on mine. "Grandma, when you leave, I want to go with you. I can't keep living with them. They use me for family photos, but they don't care about me. They never have. The only reason they haven't sent me to boarding school is because it would look bad on their social media." I hugged her tight. "You're coming with me," I promised. "I swear it on everything I am." That night, after putting the twins to bed, Chloe and I sat in front of Marcus's laptop in his study. The monitor light glowed in the darkness. She entered the password. The screen lit up, showing the desktop filled with meticulously organized folders. We started checking. We found emails, dozens of emails between Marcus and a real estate agent. They were planning to sell this house. The conversation started 2 months ago. The agent said they could easily get $500,000 for the property. Marcus replied by asking about smaller houses in other neighborhoods, houses with only 3 bedrooms, with no space for me. The plan was to sell me the idea of an assisted living facility, make me believe it was for my well-being, and keep my share of the sale money. There was a folder called Mom Finances. We opened it. It contained detailed spreadsheets of every cent they had spent of my money. Trips to Miami, $4,000. Restaurants, $2,100. Clothes and accessories, $6,800. New living room furniture, $3,500. Credit card payments. Every expense was meticulously documented, as if it were something to be proud of. Chloe was taking photos with her phone while I looked at the screen, feeling the world blur at the edges. This was my son, the baby I nursed, the boy I watched over when he had pneumonia at 7 years old, without sleeping for 3 consecutive nights, the teenager I helped with his math homework, the young man I loaned money to for his first car, the man for whom I sold my home. We found a Word document titled Strategy. We opened it. It was a step-by-step plan of how to manipulate me. Step 1, convince her to sell her house and move here. Step 2, take control of her money under the pretense of helping her. Step 3, get her to sign power of attorney. Step 4, use her as a free nanny while we pay off our debts. Step 5, when the money runs out, convince her that an assisted living facility is the best option. Step 6, sell the house and move into something smaller without her. It had been planned from the beginning. Every hug, every "we need you, Mom," every "thank you for everything you do." It had all been calculated. I wasn't his mother. I was a resource to be exploited. "That's enough," Chloe said, her voice strained. She was crying too. "Grandma, we have everything. Let's go, please. Let's go now." But I shook my head. "Not yet. We need to wait for the right moment. If we leave now while they're traveling, they'll call the police. They'll say I abandoned them with the children. We need to wait until they return." Those 5 days were eternal. I cared for the twins as always. I took them to the park. I made them their favorite meals. I read them stories before bed. Elijah and Isaiah had no idea what was happening. They were innocent in all of this. And that was the part that hurt the most. I loved them. I loved their laughter, their spontaneous hugs, the way they called me Grandma in their high voices. But I couldn't save them without destroying myself. And I had finally learned that saving myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. At night, when the house was sleeping, I packed in silence. One suitcase with my clothes, another with my important documents, your father's photos, my rosary, my mother's recipe book, the few things that truly mattered. I hid them in the back of my closet, ready to leave at any moment. Attorney Jackson called me every afternoon to review the plan. He had prepared all the legal documents, a temporary restraining order against Marcus so he couldn't touch what was left of my money, a civil lawsuit for misappropriation of funds, a criminal complaint for financial abuse of an elderly person. Everything was ready. We were just waiting for my signal. On Thursday night, Marcus called me. His voice sounded relaxed, happy. "Hey, Mom, how are the kids?" I told him they were fine, that everything was quiet. "Perfect," he said. "We'll be back Saturday afternoon. Oh, and Mom, when we get back, I need us to sign that power of attorney. I already spoke to the notary. It's important we do it soon." "Of course, son," I replied with a sweet voice. "Whenever you want." I hung up the phone. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Saturday. In 2 days, my life would change forever. Friday morning dawned bright and clear. I woke up with a strange clarity. It was as if all the fear, all the doubt had evaporated overnight. I got up at 5 a.m. as always, but this time not out of obligation, but out of choice. I made coffee in the silent kitchen and sat by the window watching the sky change from black to gray to pink. It was my second to last morning in this house. Tomorrow at this time, everything would be over. I called Janet early. "Tomorrow," I simply said. "Tomorrow we're leaving." She didn't ask questions. She just said, "I'll be ready. I'll text you the address. Come when you can." Then I called Attorney Jackson. "Tomorrow afternoon," I informed him. "They get back at 4. I need the documents ready for 5. He replied with a firm voice, "They'll be ready. You just get yourself and the girl out of that house. I'll take care of the rest." I spent that day in a strange state, as if I were watching my life from the outside. I took the twins to the park and watched them swing, their laughter filling the warm afternoon air. Isaiah asked me to push him higher. Elijah wanted me to watch him do tricks on the monkey bars. I watched them, recording every moment in my memory, knowing it would probably be the last time I cared for them like this. It wasn't their fault. They were innocent, but I couldn't save them without sacrificing myself. And I had finally learned that saving myself was not selfishness, it was survival. That night I prepared a special dinner, roasted chicken with potatoes and carrots, the twins' favorite. I even made pecan pie for dessert, the one Chloe loved. The 4 of us ate at the kitchen table. The twins talked nonstop about their day at school. Chloe ate in silence, but every now and then she looked at me, and in her eyes I saw the unspoken question. "Is it really going to happen?" I nodded slightly. "Yes. Tomorrow everything changes." After putting the children to bed, I went up to my room and checked everything one last time. The suitcases were ready, hidden in the back of the closet. The important documents were in my purse. Chloe's photos were on her phone, all the evidence backed up to the cloud. Attorney Jackson had copies of everything. There was no going back now. The plan was in motion like a rock rolling downhill. Unstoppable. I lay down, but I didn't sleep. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the house, the refrigerator humming, the water heater clicking, the small creaks of the wood settling. This house had never been mine. It had never belonged to me. I had only been a temporary piece, useful while I lasted, disposable when I was spent. Saturday dawned bright and clear. I got up, showered, and dressed carefully. Comfortable pants, a simple ivory-colored blouse, shoes I could walk in for hours if necessary. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. I looked at myself in the small mirror in my room. The woman looking back at me was not the same one who had arrived here 3 months ago. That woman had been naive, hopeful, desperate to feel needed. This woman was different. This woman had learned that sometimes love is not enough, that sometimes people disappoint you in ways you never imagined, that sometimes the only way to survive is to walk away from those who claim to love you but are actually destroying you. I made breakfast, woke the twins, fed them, bathed them, put on clean clothes, and did everything exactly as I had done every morning for 3 months. But inside, I was counting the hours. 4 p.m. That was the moment. Marcus had said they would arrive at 4. At 2 p.m., I started moving my things. I brought the suitcases downstairs when the twins were watching TV in the living room. I put them by the back door, hidden behind the curtains. Chloe came down with her own small, discreet backpack. Just the essentials, I had told her. We can get the rest later. She had packed clothes, her ID, her laptop, a few photos, nothing more. At 3:30, my phone rang. It was Janet. "I'm ready. Are you still a go?" I replied, "Yes, we leave in half an hour." Then I texted Attorney Jackson, "Proceed. I will be out in an hour." The minutes dragged. I sat in the living room with the twins, watching their cartoon show. Isaiah cuddled against my side. Elijah put his head in my lap. I stroked them gently, recording the feeling of their soft hair beneath my fingers, the small weight of their trusting bodies. "You're going to be okay," I whispered to them, though they couldn't hear me over the sound of the TV. "Your parents will take care of you. You'll grow up, and maybe someday you'll understand." At 4:10, I heard the car pull into the driveway. My heart raced, but my hands remained steady. Marcus and Sierra walked in the front door, tanned and relaxed. They carried the suitcases, bags of souvenirs, and wide smiles. "Hey!" they shouted. "We're home!" The twins ran to them, screaming, "Dad! Mom!" Marcus lifted both of them, one in each arm, laughing. Sierra saw me on the sofa. "Hey, Grace, everything okay?" Her voice was casual, disinterested. I nodded. "Everything's fine." She walked past me toward the kitchen, dragging her suitcase. Marcus put the children down and turned to me. "Mom, give me half an hour to shower and we'll sit down to sign those papers." "Yeah, the notary can come over first thing tomorrow." "Yes, son," I replied. "Take your time." They went upstairs. I heard their footsteps on the floor above. I heard the shower turn on. This was the moment. I got up from the sofa with all the calmness in the world. Chloe appeared at the living room entrance. We looked at each other. She nodded. I nodded. I went to the back door. I grabbed my suitcases. Chloe grabbed her backpack. We walked through the kitchen out to the backyard, then circled the house to the street. My old car was parked on the curb, the one Marcus had suggested I sell because I didn't need it anymore. I'm glad I never listened to him. I opened the trunk, put in the suitcases, and got into the car. Before starting the engine, I pulled a white envelope from my purse. Inside was a handwritten letter. I had drafted it the night before, choosing every word carefully. I read it one last time. "Marcus, when you read this, I will be gone. I will no longer be your unpaid employee. I will not sign any power of attorney. I will not allow you to keep robbing me. My lawyer will contact you regarding the money you spent without my authorization. I hope those trips and those jewels were worth it, because they are going to cost you much more than you paid. The children are with you, as they should be. They are your responsibility, not mine. Chloe is coming with me because she decided to. She is 16 years old and has the right to choose. Do not try to look for me. Do not try to contact me. We are done. Your mother, Grace." I got out of the car, walked back to the front door, and slid the envelope underneath. I watched it disappear into the house. Then I returned to the car, started the engine, and drove toward the corner without looking back. Chloe was quiet in the passenger seat. I took her hand. She squeezed mine hard. "It's okay to be scared," I said. "I'm scared too, but we're going to be okay together. We're going to be fine." I drove, following the GPS directions to Janet's house, 20 minutes through the city. 20 minutes that felt like hours. Every red light seemed like an eternity. I checked the rearview mirror, expecting to see Marcus's car following us, but the street behind us remained empty. We arrived at a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Peach-colored walls, a flower garden, a big tree in the front. Janet came out before we could even knock on the door. She hugged both of us without saying a word. Then she let us inside, closed the door, and said, "You are safe here. Welcome home." The guest room was simple but cozy. A double bed, a small desk, cream-colored curtains, a window with a view of a backyard full of plants. Chloe and I put down our bags. We sat on the bed. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then my phone started ringing. Marcus's name glowed on the screen. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. It immediately rang again, and again, and again. 10 calls in 5 minutes. Chloe looked at me with wide eyes. "You're not going to answer?" It wasn't a question. I shook my head. No, there's nothing left to say to him. The messages started coming in. I read them on the screen without opening the conversations. "Mom, what does this mean? Mom, answer the phone. Mom, you can't just leave like this. Mom, this is ridiculous. Mom, come back right now. Mom, I'm going to call the police. Mom, you will regret this." Each message was more desperate than the last, but I didn't reply to any of them. At 5:30, Janet's doorbell rang. She went to open it. I heard her speaking to someone at the door. Then she returned to the room. "It's a messenger. He has documents for you." I went out to the living room. A man in uniform handed me a large envelope. "Need you to sign here, ma'am." He left. I opened the envelope. It was Attorney Jackson's documents. Temporary restraining order, civil lawsuit, criminal complaint, everything officially filed with the courts. Marcus would receive his copy at any moment. My phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. I answered. It was Attorney Jackson. "Mrs. Hawthorne, the documents are filed. Marcus has been notified. From this moment on, he cannot access your bank account. What is left of your money is protected. We have also filed the lawsuit to recover what he spent without authorization. And the criminal complaint is in the hands of the prosecutor. He will try to contact you. Do not respond. Any communication must be through me." "Thank you, Attorney Jackson," I said, my voice firm. "You don't know what this means to me." He replied, "Ma'am, I have seen many cases like yours, children who exploit their elderly parents, but I rarely see someone with the courage to do what you are doing. It's going to be tough. He will fight, but the law is on your side. The evidence is irrefutable." That night, Janet cooked us dinner: vegetable soup, homemade bread, and chamomile tea. We ate in her small, cozy kitchen with flowered placemats and cloth napkins. Everything was so simple, so peaceful. There was no tension in the air, no need to walk on eggshells, no suitcases waiting by the door. For the first time in 3 months, I breathed deeply and felt my lungs fill completely. After dinner, Chloe and I sat in the guest room. She pulled out her phone and showed it to me. "Grandma, Dad is texting me. Dozens of messages." I read a few. "Chloe, this is your grandma's fault. She's abandoning us. Chloe, tell her to come back, or she's going to destroy this family. Chloe, she's manipulating you. Chloe, if you don't come back, you'll regret it." Every message was a mix of barely disguised manipulation and threat. "What do you want to do?" I asked her. "Do you want to go back?" She looked at me as if I had asked her if she wanted to cut off her arm. "No, Grandma, never. I'd rather sleep on the floor than go back to that house. They never saw me. They only saw you when they needed something, and they only saw me when they needed the perfect family photo for Instagram. We aren't people to them. We're accessories." That night, lying in the same bed in the dark, Chloe told me things she had never shared. She told me how her parents mocked her when she wasn't thin enough for their standards, how Sierra would buy her clothes 2 sizes too small as motivation to lose weight, how Marcus told her she needed to try harder in school, be more popular, get better grades, better represent the family, how they both checked her social media and demanded she delete posts that didn't project the right image, and how invisible she felt until I arrived. Until someone finally asked her how her day was and genuinely listened to the answer. She cried in my arms that night, and I cried too, for her, for me, for the years we both lost trying to please people who were never going to be satisfied. Sunday dawned with rain, soft drops tapping the window, the sky gray and heavy. My phone continued to receive calls and messages. Marcus, Sierra, unknown numbers that were probably them calling from other phones. I didn't answer any, but I read them. I needed to know what they were planning. Sierra wrote, "Grace, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is so selfish of you. You left us with 3 kids and no help. How are we supposed to work now? And you took Chloe. She has to go to school. This is kidnapping. You're going to have legal problems." I took a screenshot of that message and sent it to Attorney Jackson. He replied, Perfect. This proves they saw you as an unpaid employee, and Chloe is 16 and has rights. It's not kidnapping. Save everything they send you. In the afternoon, Marcus changed his strategy. His messages became pleading. Mom, please, let's talk. I know I made mistakes. We can fix this. The kids miss you. Elijah asks about you. Isaiah cries at night. Don't do this to them. They love you. I love you. You're my mother. You can't abandon me like this. I read those messages and felt something twist in my stomach because part of me, that part that had been a mother for 42 years, wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that maybe he truly regretted it, that maybe we could fix this. But then I remembered the mom plan messages. I remembered the spreadsheet with every cent of my money spent on luxuries. I remembered the document called Strategy. I remembered the $2,300 bracelet glittering on Sierra's wrist. No, I told myself out loud. I will not fall for it again. Chloe looked up from the desk where she was doing homework. Grandma, are you okay? I nodded. I'm fine. Just reminding myself who I am. On Monday, Chloe and I went to her school to arrange the change of address. The secretary looked at us distrustfully. We need authorization from both parents for changes to information, she said in a dry tone. Chloe pulled out her ID. I'm 16. In this state, I have the right to choose who I live with if there is just cause. My grandmother is my temporary legal guardian. Here are the documents. We handed her the papers Attorney Jackson had prepared. The secretary reviewed them, frowned, made a call, spoke to someone in a low voice, and finally sighed. All right, the change is made, but if the parents come to complain, we'll have to call the authorities. Chloe replied with a firm voice. Call them. I have nothing to hide. We left the school holding hands. I felt something swell in my chest. Pride. This 16-year-old girl had more backbone than many adults I knew. That afternoon, while Janet was at work and Chloe was at school, I sat in the small backyard garden. There was a wooden bench under a tree. I sat there with a cup of tea, listening to the birds, watching the clouds move slowly across the sky. My phone was inside. I hadn't brought it. For the first time in months, I was completely alone with my thoughts, without interruption. I thought about my 72 years of life. I had been a wife for 35 years until your father died. I had been a mother since I was 30. I had worked cleaning houses to pay the bills when Marcus was small, and your father wasn't earning enough. I had cooked thousands of meals, washed thousands of loads of laundry, cleaned countless floors, sacrificed my own dreams again and again for my family. And in the end, my own son had seen me as a disposable tool. But I was still here, breathing, alive, free, and that had to mean something. A mint plant was growing in a pot next to the bench. I touched it gently. The leaves released their fresh, strong aroma, mint, like the kind that grew in my lost garden. Janet must have planted it, or maybe it had always been there, waiting for me. I tore off a small leaf and rubbed it between my fingers. The scent filled me, anchored me to the present moment. I was going to be fine. I didn't know exactly how. I didn't know how long it would take, but I was going to be fine. When Chloe returned from school, she found me in the garden. She sat next to me on the bench. Grandma, Dad went to the school today. He saw me leaving. He tried to talk to me. My heart sped up. What did he say? She shrugged. That I'm making a mistake. That you brainwashed me. That I'll regret it. The usual stuff. I told him to leave me alone or I'd call security. He left. I'm sorry, Chloe. I don't want you to go through this. She took my hand. Grandma, I've been through worse things living with them. This, what we're doing now, this is liberation. The first week at Janet's house passed in a kind of strange fog. Every morning I woke up expecting to hear the twins' voices, expecting to rush to prepare breakfasts and pack lunches. But instead, there was silence, a soft, gentle silence that took me days to get used to appreciating. Janet left for work early, Chloe left for school, and I was left alone in that small house that smelled of lavender and toast. At first, I didn't know what to do with myself. I cleaned things that were already clean. I cooked portions that were too large, as if I were still feeding 5 people. I found myself standing up every time I heard a noise, ready to attend to someone who wasn't there. 72 years of being conditioned to serve doesn't disappear in a week. But slowly, I started to remember who I was before I became my son's invisible shadow. One afternoon, I found Janet's painting supplies in a cupboard. She told me, "Use them whenever you want. I haven't touched them in years." I took out the watercolors, the brushes, the thick paper. I sat in the garden and painted the first thing that came to mind: a small house with cream-colored walls, a garden with basil plants, a rocking chair on the porch, my lost home taking shape in soft colors on white paper. I cried as I painted, but it wasn't the desperate cry of the first few days. It was something different, a necessary mourning, a farewell to what had been. When I finished, I hung the painting on my bedroom wall, a reminder that lost things don't completely disappear if you keep them in your heart. Marcus's messages continued. Every day, a new strategy. First, they were pleas, then threats, then attempts to make me feel guilty. "Mom, Elijah got sick and asked for you. Mom, Isaiah is getting bad grades because he's depressed. Mom, Sierra had to quit her job because of you. Mom, we're going to lose the house if you don't help me." Each message was designed to make me give in, return, and submit again, but Attorney Jackson had warned me about this. "They call it the cycle of abuse," he explained to me over the phone. "First come the apologies and promises, then the threats, then the guilt, then they start over. It's predictable. Don't fall for it." I saved every message without responding. It was evidence, proof of the pattern of manipulation that had lasted my entire life without my recognizing it. One afternoon, 2 weeks after I left, Sierra showed up at Janet's front door. I don't know how she got the address. Maybe she followed Chloe. Maybe she hired someone to track us down. Janet called me at work. "Grace, that woman is on my porch. She says she won't leave until she talks to you. What do I do?" "Don't open the door," I told her. "I'm coming right now." I drove back, my heart pounding. When I arrived, Sierra was sitting on the front steps. She looked different without the perfect makeup and designer clothes. She wore gray sweatpants and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She stood up when she saw me. "Grace, we need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," I replied, maintaining my distance. "My lawyer told you. All communication must be through him." She took a step toward me. "Please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. Marcus doesn't know I'm here. I came alone." I looked into her eyes. There was something different there, something that resembled genuine fear. Against my better judgment, I said, 5 minutes, out here. You're not coming in the house." We sat on the front steps, separated by about 3 feet. Sierra nervously rubbed her hands together. "Grace, I know we made mistakes. I know we used you, but you don't understand the full situation. Marcus has debts, a lot of debt, over $200,000 in credit cards and loans. We were desperate. When you said you were selling your house, it seemed like a salvation. It wasn't with bad intentions. We were just trying to survive. So my survival mattered less than yours," I said flatly. "My money, my labor, my life, all of that was expendable so you could continue living beyond your means." "That's not it," she protested. "We were going to pay you back eventually. When Marcus's situation improved, when he got the promotion they promised him, you were going to get your money back with interest." "Eventually," I repeated. "When exactly? After you spent every last penny? After you got me to sign the power of attorney? After you put me in a cheap assisted living facility? I saw the messages, Sierra. I saw the whole plan. Don't treat me like I'm stupid." She fell silent. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Grace, they're going to put Marcus in jail. The prosecutor's lawyer says he could face up to 5 years for fraud and financial abuse of an elderly person. 5 years. Our children are going to grow up without a father." She looked at me with pleading eyes. "Please drop the charges. We'll give back what's left of the money. We'll sign whatever, but don't destroy your own son." I felt something clench in my chest, because that part of me that was a mother still existed. That part that remembered Marcus as a small, innocent child full of dreams. But then I remembered something else. I remembered his messages in the mom plan group. I remembered how he laughed when they planned to give me the smallest room. I remembered the spreadsheet where my $30,000 turned into vacations and jewels. I remembered his voice at the family dinner saying, "Your job is to look after my kids while I enjoy my life." "I am not destroying my son," I said slowly. "He destroyed himself with his choices. I am simply protecting myself, something I should have done a long time ago." Sierra stood up abruptly. "You're selfish, a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her own son happy. Marcus gave you a roof over your head. He gave you a family, and this is how you repay him? I hope you can live with yourself, knowing you destroyed your own family." I stood up too. I kept my voice calm, though I was trembling inside. "Sierra, my son stole $30,000 from me. He lied to me. He exploited me. He treated me as an unpaid employee. He planned to put me in an assisted living facility when I was no longer useful, and you were there every step of the way, supporting him, spending my money on gold bracelets. Don't talk to me about family. You two destroyed that long before I left." She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. She turned and walked toward her car. Before getting in, she shouted, "This isn't over. We're going to fight. We're going to get Chloe back, and you will regret this." I watched her drive away. My legs were shaking. I went into the house and collapsed onto the sofa. Janet came out of the kitchen, where she had been listening to everything. She hugged me without saying a word, and I allowed myself to cry for everything I had lost, for everything I would never have again, for the family I thought I had, but which never truly existed. That night, Attorney Jackson called me. "Mrs. Hawthorne, I have news. Marcus is trying to reach a settlement. He offers to return $24,000, everything supposedly left after paying some critical debts. In exchange, you drop the criminal charges. You can still pursue the civil lawsuit if you want, but he would avoid jail." I considered the offer. $24,000 of my original $45,000. Better than nothing. And Marcus would avoid prison. The twins wouldn't grow up visiting their father behind bars. But something in me resisted. What about the power of attorney he tried to make me sign? What about the furniture they sold? What about all those months I worked as a free nanny? Attorney Jackson sighed. "Legally, unpaid family care work is difficult to quantify in court. We can include the furniture in the civil suit. The power of attorney was never signed, so it doesn't constitute a crime, only attempted crime. If you accept the settlement, you recover most of your money and close this chapter. If you move forward with everything, you might win more eventually, but it will be a long, painful, and public process. Your son will go to prison. The decision is yours." "I need to think about it," I said. "Give me a few days." That decision haunted me all week. Chloe told me, "Grandma, don't give them anything. Make them pay for everything they did." Janet told me, "Grace, only you know what's right for you." I wrestled between justice and mercy, between the son he had been and the man he had become. The answer came in an unexpected way. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after I had left. I was in Janet's garden, watering the mint plants that I had started caring for as a daily ritual. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me slide my finger across the screen. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Grandma Grace?" It was Isaiah's voice, one of the twins. His small voice shot through the phone like an arrow, straight to my heart. "Grandma, I miss you so much. When are you coming back? Dad says you left because you don't love us." My breath hitched. I heard background noise. Then Marcus's voice. "Isaiah, give me the phone now." "No!" Isaiah yelled. "I want to talk to Grandma." There was a struggle. The phone dropped. I heard Isaiah crying, then Marcus's voice, clear and cold. "See what you're causing, Mom? Your grandchildren are suffering because of your selfishness." The call cut off. I stood there, phone in hand, trembling. Janet came out into the garden and found me with tears rolling down my cheeks. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed. I told her. She pressed her lips together, furious. "That's pure manipulation. He's using that child as a weapon. This has to stop, Grace." I called Attorney Jackson immediately. I told him about the call. He listened in silence. Then he said, "This is harassment via a minor. I can request a broader restraining order that includes indirect contact. But Mrs. Hawthorne, I need you to make a decision about the settlement. Marcus is pushing because he knows the prosecutor has a solid case. If you reject the settlement, we go to trial. He faces serious criminal charges. I need to know what you want to do." I sat down on the garden bench. The afternoon sun warmed my face. I closed my eyes and thought about everything: the $30,000 stolen, the months of unpaid labor, the manipulation, the lies. But I also thought of Isaiah crying, of Elijah, probably just as confused, of how their lives would change if their father went to prison. And then I realized something. This had never been about revenge. It had been about dignity, about setting boundaries, about saying, "No more." And I had already achieved that. I had already left. I had already recovered my freedom. I had already saved Chloe. Sending Marcus to prison wouldn't give me back my lost years. It wouldn't heal the wounds. It would only add more pain to an already painful situation. "I accept the settlement," I told Attorney Jackson, "but with conditions. I want the $24,000 in 1 week. I want Marcus and Sierra to sign a document acknowledging what they did. I want them to commit to never contacting me again, directly or indirectly. And I want them to leave Chloe alone. If they try to force her to return, the agreement is canceled, and we go to trial." Attorney Jackson took a moment to reply. "That is fair. I will draft the terms. But Mrs. Hawthorne, are you sure? You have every right to demand complete justice." "I am sure," I replied. "I don't want my grandchildren to grow up hating me because I put their father in prison. I've lost enough. I won't lose my inner peace, too, by seeking revenge that won't make me feel better." The settlement was signed the following Friday. Attorney Jackson met me at his office. I arrived with Janet by my side for moral support. Marcus and Sierra were already there with their own lawyer, a man in a dark suit with an unfriendly face. Marcus wouldn't look me in the eye. Sierra looked at the floor. Attorney Jackson read the terms aloud. "Marcus Hawthorne and Sierra Benson acknowledge having improperly used funds belonging to Mrs. Grace Hawthorne. They commit to returning the said amount in full within 7 days. They acknowledge having sold Mrs. Hawthorne's personal property without authorization, valued at $800, which will also be restituted. They commit to not contacting Mrs. Hawthorne or her granddaughter, Chloe Hawthorne, by any means, direct or indirect, unless through legal representation. Mrs. Hawthorne agrees to drop the criminal charges, but retains the right to proceed with the civil lawsuit if any of these terms are violated." We all signed. Pens scratched the paper in the tense silence of the office. When we finished, Attorney Jackson gathered the documents. Marcus's lawyer handed him a check. Attorney Jackson examined it. He nodded. $24,800. Everything is in order." Marcus stood up to leave. At the door, he stopped. He turned to me for the first time. "Mom," he said in a low voice, "I'm sorry. I really am. I don't know when everything got out of control. I always love you. I have always loved you." I looked him in the eyes, those eyes that were like mine. "Marcus," I replied, my voice calm, "I wish that had been enough. But love without respect isn't love. It's just a word you use when you need something. I hope you understand that someday, for your children's sake." He opened his mouth as if to say something more, but nothing came out. He walked out of the office with Sierra following behind. I watched them walk away through the window. I felt something close inside me. A chapter ending. A door closing softly, but definitely. That night, Chloe, Janet, and I celebrated in the small kitchen. Nothing extravagant, just homemade pasta, salad, and a bottle of cheap wine Janet pulled from her pantry. We toasted to new beginnings, to women who save each other, to the courage to say enough. With the recovered money, I started planning. I couldn't stay with Janet forever. She insisted there was no rush, that we were welcome for as long as we needed, but I needed my own space again. I needed to rebuild in a place that was mine. I found a small apartment 2 miles from Janet's house, an older but well-maintained building with 2-bedroom units for seniors. The rent was $600 a month, utilities included. It had a small kitchen with a window that faced east, perfect for the morning sun. It had a narrow balcony where I could put potted plants, and most importantly, it had 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for Chloe. I showed her the place. She walked through the empty rooms, her steps echoing on the hardwood floors. "Grandma, it's perfect," she said with a smile. "We can make it ours." We signed the lease the following week and moved in with the little we had. Janet helped us by bringing boxes of things she no longer used: plates, pots, sheets, towels. "We'll share what I have," she insisted. "What's family for, if not this?" The first day in our apartment was strange, silent, empty, but also full of possibilities. Chloe and I assembled the furniture we bought secondhand: a small kitchen table, a slightly worn but comfortable olive green sofa, 2 beds, a bookcase for Chloe's books. Little by little, the empty space filled with life. I planted mint on the balcony. 3 small pots with the plant that had become my symbol of resilience, mint that grows anywhere, that survives even when cut, that always comes back stronger, just like me. One evening, sitting on the balcony watching the sunset, Chloe asked me, "Grandma, do you think you'll ever forgive Dad?" I thought about the question. The sky was stained with orange and pink, the clouds moving slowly. "I think forgiveness is complicated," I replied. "It doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean allowing it to happen again. It means releasing the poison so it doesn't make you sick inside. Someday, maybe I can forgive him, but I will never forget, and I will never allow him to hurt me again." She nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. "I admire you so much, Grandma. You're the strongest person I know." I laughed softly. "I don't feel strong, Chloe. Most days, I barely feel like I'm surviving. But surviving is already a victory, I think." The weeks passed, and the apartment felt more like home. I found a part-time job at a neighborhood flower shop. Nothing extravagant, just helping organize arrangements and tending to customers 3 days a week. They paid me $15 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Money I earned through my own effort that no one could take from me. Chloe thrived in her new life. Her grades improved, she made new friends, and she started smiling more. One night she came home excited. "Grandma, I got accepted into the school art club. We're having an exhibition next month. Do you want to come?" "Of course," I replied, hugging her. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." Marcus's messages eventually stopped. The last I heard from him was a short text message 3 months after the settlement. "Mom, just wanted you to know the kids are doing well. Elijah got good grades. Isaiah made the soccer team. Thought you'd like to know." I didn't reply, but I saved the message. 6 months after I left, my life had found a rhythm I never thought possible. I woke up when my body was ready, not when an alarm demanded I serve others. I drank my coffee on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the neighborhood buildings. The mint plants had grown lush, their green leaves shining and gently swaying in the morning breeze. Sometimes I would tear off a leaf and rub it between my fingers, letting the aroma remind me of where I came from and how far I had come. The flower shop became more than a job. The owner, a woman named Ariana in her 50s, taught me the secret language of flowers. "Roses don't just mean love," she told me as we arranged a bouquet. "Chrysanthemums speak of truth. Daisies of innocence, lilies of renewal." I listened and learned, and for the first time in decades, I felt like I was growing as a person instead of just existing for others. Chloe blossomed in ways that filled my heart. Her art exhibition was a success. She presented a series of paintings about invisible women, women who worked in the background while others shone in the front. One of the paintings was of me, though I didn't recognize it at first, an older woman standing in a kitchen, her figure almost transparent, while life around her continued without seeing her. When I asked her why she painted me that way, she said, "Because for a long time you were invisible to everyone but me. But you're not anymore, Grandma. Now everyone sees you." One Saturday afternoon, 3 months after moving in, I received an unexpected call. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something inside me knew I should answer. "Hello?" I said cautiously. "Grandma Grace?" It was Elijah's voice, the twin, more mature than the last time I heard it, but unmistakable. "Grandma, it's me, Elijah. Please don't hang up." My heart pounded. "Hello, Elijah," I replied softly. "How are you?" There was a silence, then, "I miss you. Isaiah misses you too. Dad and Mom won't let us talk about you. They say you left because you don't love us." Tears started rolling down my cheeks. "I miss you both so much," I whispered. "Every day. How are you?" "We're okay." He told me about school, about Isaiah's soccer team, about his new teacher. He spoke quickly, as if afraid someone would discover him. Then he said something that broke me. "Grandma, Dad says you hated us. That's why you left." "But I don't believe it. You never looked at us like we were a burden, not like them." "Elijah, listen closely to what I'm going to tell you," I said, my voice firm but loving. "I love you and Isaiah and even Chloe, who is with me. I love you more than words can express. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because your father was hurting me in ways you can't understand yet. Sometimes the people we love hurt us, and walking away isn't abandonment. It's protection." I heard his ragged breathing. "I understand," he finally said. "Or maybe I don't understand everything, but I know you're not bad. I know Dad and Mom lie about a lot of things. I see it, Grandma. When I'm older, can I come visit you?" "Of course you can," I replied. "When you're older and you can make your own decisions, my door will always be open for you." The call lasted only 10 minutes. When he hung up, I stayed sitting on the sofa, holding the phone against my chest. Chloe came out of her room, saw me crying, and sat down next to me. "It was the twins," I told her. "Elijah called." She hugged me without saying anything. Sometimes silence is the best comfort. Autumn arrived, painting the trees in warm colors. Leaves fell like whispered confessions, covering the streets in shades of ochre and cinnamon. I turned 73 in October. Janet and Chloe threw me a small party in our apartment. Chocolate cake, candles, a slightly off-key happy birthday song. Simple but meaningful gifts. Janet gave me a hand-knitted, mustard-colored sweater. Chloe gave me a diary with a note on the first page. "So you can write your story, Grandma. The real one, the one no one can take from you." That night, alone in my room, I opened the diary. The blank page intimidated me. What story did I have to tell? But then I picked up the pen and started writing. Not from the beginning, but from the end. I wrote, "Today, I turned 73, and for the first time in decades, I am free." Then I kept writing backward, unraveling the threads of my life, finding patterns I hadn't seen before: sacrifice, silence, submission, but also resilience, resistance, rebirth. One November afternoon, while I was working at the flower shop, a young woman came in with a baby in her arms. She needed an arrangement for her grandmother's funeral. As we talked, tears escaped her. "She raised me," she told me. "My parents were too busy with their careers. My grandmother was the one who took care of me, who listened to me, who saw me, and I never thanked her enough. Now she's gone, and I can't tell her how much she meant to me." I created the most beautiful arrangement I could: white lilies for renewal, pink roses for gratitude, mint for eternal memory. When I handed it to her, I said, "She knew. Grandmothers always know. Love doesn't need constant words. It's felt in the small moments, in the glances, in the presence. She knew." The woman hugged me, crying. "Thank you," she whispered. "I needed to hear that." When she left, I stayed thinking. Maybe someday, years from now, Elijah or Isaiah would remember the breakfasts I made for them, the stories I read them, the hugs I gave them. Maybe they would remember that there was someone who loved them unconditionally, even if I couldn't stay. And maybe That would be enough. December brought cold and Christmas lights. Chloe and I decorated our apartment modestly. A wreath on the door, white lights around the window, a small tree we bought secondhand and decorated with handmade ornaments. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We had peace, we had dignity, we had each other. On Christmas Eve, Janet invited us over for dinner. We cooked together, the three women in her small kitchen, laughing as we peeled potatoes and seasoned the turkey. The house smelled of cinnamon and rosemary. The table was set with her nice dishes. And when we sat down to eat, Janet raised her glass of cheap wine and made a toast. To the women who stand up, to the ones who leave when they need to go, to the ones who build family with those who value them, not just with those who share their blood. We clinked our glasses. The sound echoed like tiny bells, and in that moment, surrounded by these two women who had saved me just as much as I had saved them, I realized something. I had lost a lot. My house, my money, my relationship with my son, my grandchildren. But I had gained something far more valuable. I had gained myself back. That night, back in our apartment, I sat on the balcony despite the cold. The mint plants were dormant for the winter, but their roots were still alive beneath the soil, waiting for spring to grow again. Just as I had been through the darkest winter of my life. But spring would come. It always does. Chloe came out onto the balcony with a blanket, wrapped it around my shoulders, and sat down next to me. "Grandma, what are you thinking about?" I smiled. "I'm thinking that I didn't need to yell to be heard. I just needed to leave for them to understand. I'm thinking that I spent 72 years learning to be small, invisible, serviceable, and now I'm learning to be me, whole, visible, valuable." She took my hand. "You did it, Grandma. You got out. You survived." I shook my head gently. "It wasn't about winning, Chloe. It was about choosing myself. Finally, after a lifetime, I chose myself, and that, my child, was the greatest victory of all." The night sky was full of stars. The city glowed softly around us. Somewhere in that city was Marcus with his children, probably telling them the story where I was the villain. But I no longer carried that narrative. I had written my own. And in my story, I was neither the villain nor the victim. I was the heroine who saved herself. Chloe rested her head on my shoulder. We stayed there, in silence, watching the city lights blink like small promises. The future stretched out before us, uncertain but full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, that future didn't scare me, because I had learned the most important lesson: that you can love someone and still walk away, that you can forgive without forgetting, that you can start over at any age. The mint on the balcony was waiting for spring. I was too. But I was no longer waiting to serve others. I was waiting to bloom for myself. And when that spring came, when the plants grew again and the world filled with green once more, I would be here. Free. Whole. Finally home in my own life. I never went back to that house where I was invisible. I never answered when they called to ask for something again. I closed that door gently but firmly, and on the other side, I built something new, something mine, something no one could ever take from me again. They never touched my name without my permission again, and I never made myself small to fit into the spaces others designed for me. This was my life now, and it was enough. It was more than enough. Did you like my story? If you listened till the end, drop a number 1 in the comments. If you enjoyed it, you can support me by liking the video and sending a small tip. I've got lots of other life stories like this on my channel, so make sure to subscribe and check them out. I've added 2 new stories on screen that everyone loves. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one, with love.